This is a video blog about the paper Evaluation and Measurement by Orazio Attanasio from Yale University and myself, Elisa Cavatorta from King's College London. Orazio, why did we write the paper?
Well, we wrote the paper, the title of the paper is self-explanatory, and at some level is almost an obvious point. If you want to evaluate something, the impact of an intervention, you need to measure what you want to evaluate. So that's an obvious point. The main reason to write the paper, however, is that beyond that, there are some more subtle issues. The first one is that evaluation work is often done using measures of the outcomes that are considered the goal of the interventions. We're using measures that have been developed in different contexts and often in a very mechanical way, and that might not be the best practice. More importantly, more subtly, from a policy perspective, if you're interested in maybe improving the interventions that you're evaluating, or maybe scaling them up, is necessary to understand why you observe certain impacts. And in order to do so, you need to measure the factors that drive individual behavior and eventually generate the outcomes that one observes. If you limit yourself exclusively to the direct outcomes, that approach might be too limited and not particularly useful.
And the second aspect of the title, which is measurement, comes from the fact that a big challenge in doing that, in measuring the factor behind the changes in behavior, is that those factors might not be directly observable, and yet they are really the major interest to both policymakers and researchers. So in the paper, we argue that measurement, and in particular innovative measurement, can be key to this endeavor and should be encouraged. And this is why in the paper we focus on a number of critical reflections that, in our opinion, are four key core questions for any evaluator. First of all, what to measure. Second, how to measure it. Third, how to use existing measures. And fourth, importantly, how to construct new measures. So maybe, Orazio, can we make an example to make things a little bit more concrete? What would you say it's important to measure?
Yes, what I think is very useful to make concrete examples to convey certain messages. So I will do that, and I will refer to something that I've been working quite a bit over the last few years, which are the evaluation of interventions aimed at improving child development through stimulation, especially child development of children growing in disadvantaged conditions. So, first of all, even going beyond the unusual measures or new measures, when you measure child development, especially in developing countries, it's not necessarily obvious what measures to use and whether it's appropriate to use measures that might have been developed in Florida or somewhere else in completely different contexts. So one should be careful about that aspect. More subtly, if you think that, especially for the very early years, an important element of child development is the stimulation that children receive from their parents, you might want to change parental behavior. And in order to change parental behavior, you need to understand what drives it. And one hypothesis that is often made is that individual choices depends, among other things, on the perceptions that the parents have about the process of child development. And therefore, you want to construct measures that would allow you to capture individual beliefs about child development.
And maybe to add to that is important to note what can be what this new measurement can add. So typically, when we lack appropriate data, we tend to overcome that problem by strong modeling assumptions. So, for example, we know that beliefs are important not just for parenting, but also for many other important decisions on savings, investment, school choices, and these choices depend on individual expectation about the futures. So in the absence of measurement on individual beliefs, we assume that everyone has the same expectation, or that the choices, for example, are informed by complete knowledge of the processes that generated the future variables. And this obviously might not be the case, it might not be realistic. And beliefs or expectation might be very different from person to person. They might even be inaccurate or even biased in some ways. And so new measurement allow to make models that are much more flexible, more realistic, and obviously improve the theory which we can use to measure and impact of interventions.
Yes, that's very well put. And then you bring about what is the next important point, which is how do you measure beliefs? You know, economists, and we both are economists here, we've been trained as economists, have been skeptical about the use of this type of measures of attitudes, of beliefs, or subjective expectations, something that is different from individual choices or objectively observed variables. However, we think that it's important to do it, and it's not easy, and you have to be careful. You have to design measures that are appropriately validated, and maybe check that they pass some obvious reality checks, but also correlate with individual choices. And we think it's possible. We've been used, in the paper, we use a number of examples, some taken from our own work, some from other people's work, but we think that it's important to get there and to obtain measures that not only are meaningful, but also can be aggregated in meaningful ways, so to construct quantitative variables that can be used in the evaluation work. So to summarize the work we have done in this paper, I think we can say that there are two big messages that we wanted to give to evaluators or people working in evaluation. And maybe we can take turns on giving them. The first one is that the evaluators should not focus exclusively in the direct outcomes of interest to a given policy.
The second is an invitation to engage in the design of new measures and validation exercises of these new measures, particularly of constructs that are not directly observable, but they are relevant to understand the causes of behavioral change in specific context.